coming out. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Jaffe with the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for coming out. We're very proud to host a public advocate forum with our partners, New Democratic Convention. Tom Acosta, please stand up. And Howard Teach, thank you for helping to put together. For those of you who don't know, there's an election coming up, a special election to replace our good friend Tish James, who is now the most powerful attorney in the state of New York, and therefore one of the most powerful attorneys in our country and the world. So the public advocate position, what is it? I'm not going to answer that question. We're going to let the dozen or so people running for the position answer that through this special forum that Howard has developed, the technique, and we worked hard on the questions. And without much more further comment, let me introduce Howard Teach of New Democratic Conventions.
So I want to thank the Greater New York Chamber and Mark for participating in this and really doing a great job. For everybody who's going to watch us in the future, it's the one day in the entire winter that we actually have snow. So I'll hold it out a little bit. I just want to say two things, and I'll ask Michael if you'd come up in the meantime, because we're going to start right after this. The tone of the evening is Thoughts for a Future New York City. The object tonight is really to get the candidates to look from the point of view of what their legacy would be. What would be the best that they would bring to the office that would be remembered? The highest level, thinking out of the box for the issues that they could contribute to making a difference in New York City. So we're going to dive right into it. New Democratic Convention's been around since 1982, I think it is, or 81. And it was independent thinking Democrats, and in this election, I think it's important to say it. It's a nonpartisan election. Not by party, although each has had a title that they've put as their party, which we're going to dive into a little bit because it's fascinating. But we have 12 candidates who are going to be here tonight, and I would ask Michael Blake, Assembly Member Michael Blake, if he would come up here and we'll start the process. So welcome, Michael.
Hello.
Hey. So welcome, and what we're going to do is ask in the 5-minute segment that we have here, if you would open in a minute, just telling us from your point of view what you bring to the role of public advocate, and why, when you finish up, we're going to say, wow, that was some incredible public advocate here, and what a difference.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good seeing you, Mike. My name is Michael Blake. I am grateful for you to allow me to be here tonight, and thankful for the co-host. I'm born and raised in the Bronx, New York. Here we go. I am the son of Jamaican immigrants. My mother, for 40 years, worked at a factory in New Jersey. She raised 4 boys. My father, for 29 years, was a janitor at St. Barnabas Hospital, a proud member of 1199 SEIU. I went to PS 79 118 in DeWitt Clinton High School, and then went to Northwestern University, where before graduation, I had a near-fatal car accident. I fell asleep at the wheel. If it wasn't for the luggage in the car and the grace of God, I'd go over the cliff that day. Before being in the Assembly, I had the opportunity to work for President Obama for 6.5 years. I worked at the White House, where I oversaw the Minority and Women Business Portfolio, and I was on both campaigns, starting in Iowa as the Constituent Organizing Director and as the National Deputy Director for the re-election, in the re-election itself. In the last 4+ years, I've been in the State Assembly for 3 terms, focusing primarily on jobs. We were able to make the work happen, in particular, changing the law so that any company that contracts with New York State below 300 employees gets paid in 15 days instead of 30 days, making it easier to help. In terms of the legacy and the vision of what I have for the office, my entire vision is focused on 2 parts, on jobs and justice. What does that mean? I do believe. Oh, okay. Okay, well, the future of New York City for me and the legacy that I want to leave is focusing on jobs and justice, and that frame of everything we want to do is tied to that. I look forward to the question to drive that home.
So one of the things that I'd like to have a quick conversation with you on is, as it goes to jobs and justice, is the educational system. I consider it almost a human rights violation in terms of what's happened. Kids who haven't had opportunities here. And we've talked about the upper schools and orchestrating so people have an opportunity. What's your feeling about that? But more importantly, how do we uplift everybody? And what role would the public advocate have?
Well, education is a cornerstone of my vision. And I think we have to transform what's happening right now, in which too many children are essentially being taught to a test rather than educated to learn. And so, when we think about college readiness, for example, the two main subjects that impact college readiness are math as a whole and algebra. We have to figure out ways that it's not just four-year institutions, but also vocational schools, and the skills development access that has to happen as well. And so for me, I went to Pier 79, which Jonathan Kozol wrote about in Savage Inequality Children in American Schools. And so I've seen this firsthand. If you want to be able to give a child a chance, you have to show all aspects of it, whether it be career opportunities, whether making sure there's professional development for the teachers, whether we recognize that if a child has lunch in the third period at 10:30 a.m. and they're hungry the rest of the day, it will impact everything else thereafter. And so a legacy of the vision of what we want to accomplish is being very focused on the transformation of education, bringing everyone together to then understand the best practices. It's one of the reasons I'm excited that David Banks, who's the CEO of the Eagle Academy, has endorsed my campaign as a co-chair to show there has to be a bigger vision of how we educate New Yorkers.
That's great. I was once principal for a day at Eagle Academy, so I know what David has done up there. Bringing people together is really important at this time as we're talking about hatred that's become more and more part of the common discussion, although I'm not sure it's real. But that has been part of the discussion, whether it be racism, whether it be homophobia, whether it be in terms of anti-Semitism and so forth. The convening part of the public advocate role, how do you see that, and how do you see, as things come up, that the public advocate could really be a premier place that people see as safe space for making a difference in that?
I am fundamentally focused on how do we unite our city. Dr. King said, in the end, we remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And so we cannot be silent while there's a rise of anti-Semitic language and rhetoric that's happening. We cannot be silent while women are seeing misogynistic behavior that's occurring. We cannot be silent as you have elected officials who are saying hateful rhetoric against the LGBT community. And it's one of the reasons why I call for Councilman Diaz to resign. Can't be silent while the black community is fearful and concerned about being shot and killed and no one being held accountable. Can't be silent while the Latino community is wondering right now as it relates to the racist wall. Can't be silent while the Muslim community is concerned about the unconstitutional ban. And so I do believe the public advocate has to be a convener. Has to say, how do we unite and come together? Coming with a frame of shared values and shared responsibilities lead to shared benefits. And so what does that mean? 2 weeks from tonight, someone's going to be elected as public advocate. Someone is going to be in the seat to be able to be the voice for the people. And you have to be able to demonstrate and convey, whether it be on education, or on jobs, or on housing, or on civil rights, or just justice as a whole. How do we unite us as a people? And that's what I want to do. It's the work I did in working for President Obama in Iowa in the White House. It's the work I did on criminal justice reform in the State Assembly. It's the work I did as a vice chair at the DNC, in which we went around the country with Blue Wave. And it's the work I want to do here in New York City. People want to know that we're going to unite and be a uniter and a convener, and that's what I would hope to do.
This gives us a sense of who you are in this 5-minute brief period of time. We want to give you 30 seconds. If you would, whatever you didn't cover that you want to cover, you got 30 seconds for it with one comment for all of those who are candidates. We respect the fact that you're out there doing public service. It's not easy, and we congratulate you for doing it.
Well, we thank you, and we thank you all for allowing us to be here tonight. Again, I'm coming with a vision of jobs and justice for the people. I want to help more people. This is an opportunity for us to focus on education, focus on affordable housing. I have a vision when it comes to housing that we should make sure that we're addressing what's happening in public housing on rent stabilization and on home ownership. How do we address with MTA? And saying very clearly that I do believe the public advocate should be on the MTA board to provide justice for the communities. It's one reason Dick Ravage endorsed my campaign. We're focusing on how to help unite the city. And so on February 26th, I'll be the second name on the ballot under the For the People line. Our website is blakefornyc.com. And if you believe in the vision of what I've been discussing of jobs and justice, my name is Michael Blake, and I ask for your consideration for your vote in 2 weeks to be the next public advocate in New York City.
Thanks, Michael. And now,
Thank you, Michael. And we know you have other commitments, your time's at a premium, and thank you for sharing with us. I would ask that all the candidates come up front so we can see who's here. I'm going to invite Ron Kim up. Assemblyman Ron Kim. So, welcome, Mr. Kim. You have taken a historic path. This is a new position, public advocate. We've had some great leaders. One is now the mayor. Everybody knows Mr. Bill de Blasio, and one is now the most powerful attorney in the state, Tish James. What would you like your legacy to be if you are elected as our next public advocate?
Well, first and foremost, let me begin by thanking the Chamber of Commerce and our co-host, and thank you, Mark and Howard, and everyone else for doing a wonderful job. I'm running to put people over corporations. That's been my platform on this campaign. And that starts for me by protecting our local communities and making sure that we have locally resilient economies. That starts with protecting mom and pop and small business owners. I'm a son of a grocery store owner. My dad had my parents ran a small grocery store just maybe 20 blocks away from here. I came here at the age of 7 from South Korea in 1987. The Mets had just won the World Series back then when I came here. And Ronald Reagan was the president at the time. And my uncle was the one great American Republican in town in Flushing. And he was a fan of Ronald Reagan, so he wanted to name me after Ronald Reagan. Eric appreciates that story. But I tell people I was named after Ron Darling though, because I don't want to get called out. But the point is, I think there's nothing more important moving forward for our democracy and for our capitalistic values than protecting the interests of mom and pop small businesses. But we designed the system where we're only rewarding the bigger players in the market while the smaller players are suffering. If I can leave that legacy in 8 years, that we can create a vibrant local economy, I would be very proud of our work.
Thank you. So, a big issue in the city, there are a lot, but a big issue today is the Amazon project, creating many, many jobs, yet we don't know if they're going to be union jobs. So we are hearing both sides of the story. We want jobs, we want good paying jobs, and yet we want the voices to be heard. How do you feel about the project? I know you're running on a particular party line, so could you take about a minute and explain to us how you would work with Amazon to make sure those jobs can be offered to the residents of your community?
First, let me begin by saying that for the last 20 years, in every economist that I've looked at, to see if there's a correlation of us giving corporate giveaways and the jobs and economic growth that these multinational corporations are creating for us. And there's absolutely no statistical correlation. A company like Amazon was planning to come to New York City regardless of whether we give them a dime. Imagine if we actually invested all that money back into small businesses. Imagine we told small business owners, we're going to give $3 billion of tax breaks for you guys in the state of New York. Imagine if we did that. That would actually lead to more jobs immediately, right? And that's tangible jobs that's going to be hiring locally. I don't blame Amazon, to be honest, or Jeff Bezos, for playing this game. You know, we created the system, he's taking advantage of it. But we can actually work together to stop this race to the bottom. It's not hurting, it's hurting our economies. We can, and I have legislation around this, to create an interstate, intercity compact, lining up cities and mayors and governors saying we're no longer going to participate in this race to the bottom type of activity to give away taxpayers' money when we know that there's no correlation with jobs and the money that we're giving them. And having said that, I've been against Amazon from day one because I don't believe in supporting the growth of these type of super monopolies. When Amazon is becoming so powerful, when they're no longer just controlling one market, and they become the market in this space, controlling the supply chain all the way to retail, now they want to take on bodegas. New York City's bodegas. You know, it's not good for capitalism. It's not good for democracy. You know, they should be broken up. You could be the cloud company, shipping company, retail, online platform. Pick one. You can't control the entire ecosystem. So that's been my stance.
Thank you. Also, on that note, we want to ask you a question about congestion pricing and public transportation. Now, not everybody's going to be able to take a helicopter to work like Jeff Bezos. So, how do you see congestion pricing as a viable alternative to fund public transportation, or do you have other ideas?
Sure. Yeah, Howard can take it all. I think he's smiling there. So I don't know. But conceptually, I believe congestion pricing can be effective. I was actually Mayor Goldberg's as a staffer. I was on his NYC 20. Remember NYC 2030 plan came with about 10 years ago, because it incentivizes people to get into use public transportation, and it's environmentally friendly. Overall, it's a good plan. What it does right now, though, it's normalizing the practice of financing our infrastructure, our MTA, off the backs of middle class and working families without borrows. So that's why I'm ambivalent. I want to work toward a better solution where we can find revenue from holding companies like Uber and some of the bigger corporations more accountable. You want to come to business here, pay your fair share, and help us build out our MTA that has been depleted of funds for decades. I mean, that's a long-term solution to finding revenue. But for now, I'm willing to put a band-aid because the MTA is bleeding of money. So if you can get us to point A to point B, I'm willing to work.
So we appreciate that. So in summary, why would you make the best public advocate?
There's no one except for a couple of people in the entire legislative body from the city and state is talking about protecting local mom and pops and small businesses and making that as a priority for the city of New York. I am a proud product of small business owners, and I believe our democracy is healthy when we can lift this community up, and I believe I can get us there in the next 10, 20 years.
Thank you, Assemblyman, and we hope to have you back either as the next public advocate or in your role in the New York State Assembly. Many good issues you touched upon. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Don Smalls.
Hi, I'm Tom Lawson, and I chair of the Democratic Convention along with Howard Teach. Welcome. I'm going to ask you questions very quickly. I'm not going to have a lot of commentary. Your answers are much more important to everybody here. Earlier, a question was asked about Amazon.
Yes.
What do you see your role in an issue like Amazon as public advocate? What does public advocate contribute to that discussion, that issue?
So my position on Amazon is that I believe that something of this scale should be fully put out to the public for 90 days, that the mayor and the governor should not go in a back room and decide something of this scale. Should be put out to the public for 90 days and voted on by the city council, and if the people of New York want Amazon, we should welcome them.
So as public advocate, you would put forth a platform that addressed the process right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would use my voice and try to advocate and slow down the deal until there was full public review and a vote by the city council.
And if you were to take
I have an addendum though.
if you were to take a position on the issue,
Sure.
how would you process that within the scope of the public advocate's responsibility?
Well, it's not the public advocate's strict responsibilities. The public advocate is the independent check on the mayor, the city government, and the city council and how well they provide services to New Yorkers. That's what the public advocate is. It is a bully pulpit, and many people ask the public advocate to take public positions on any number of issues, but if you're asking me specifically within the office, there's nothing within the powers of the office or what the public advocate does that would be directly within the scope of Amazon. As a New York City public official, again, people look for leadership and look for your voice on issues of concern. My voice would be added to the fact that I think the deal should be slowed down and there should be public review and process before the deal was approved. There is one important addendum. That site that Amazon is supposed to be coming to was originally slotted for 1,500 affordable housing units. My position on Amazon is contingent on an alternative plan for those an alternative site for those 1,500 affordable housing units.
Let me ask you, the public advocate has at various times been described as the chief social worker, top social worker of New York City, and at other times as the chief organizer. And I think the implication is that on the social work side, the public advocate takes issues and tries to impact them as a public servant and tries to unilaterally solve the problem. The chief organizer, on the other hand, says, okay, that's a legitimate issue, and I want to see what my constituents are going to do about this, and lead the way for the constituents to take the lead to press the issue, as opposed to leading the issue. How would you describe yourself with respect to those two?
I hadn't heard that frame on The Office, so I appreciate a new one.
It's very popular among the Linsky organizers.
Okay. I'm approaching this job as, I would say, the chief problem solver. So I'm looking to tackle the issues that I think affect every New Yorker, no matter what their borough and what their station. I believe in government as a force for good if it works. My job as public advocate is to call out the places where government is falling short, whether that be to neglect, inefficiency, corruption, call it out, offer solutions about how we can do better, and make sure that New Yorkers are getting the services that they deserve.
Thank you. You have 75 seconds to wrap up? A minute.
Okay. So I'm coming to this race with over 2 decades of experience in law, government, politics, and philanthropy. I've worked for 2 Democratic presidential administrations. I worked for the White House Chief of Staff in the Clinton administration. And most relevant to this position for me is that I was the Chief Regulatory Officer at HHS during the Obama administration and was part of the leadership team responsible for the initial implementation of the Affordable Care Act. Why that's relevant is because I have direct experience in the bureaucracy and I have direct experience breaking through the bureaucracy to get results. And that's why I want to be, that's what I want to do for New York, and that's why I want to be the next public advocate. So I hope you check me out. This was very brief. My website is dawnfornewyork.com, and hopefully I'll earn your vote on Election Day, which is February 26th. Thank you.
Brief, but you distinguished yourself.
Thank you very much. The Linsky social worker.
How's the weather out there?
Delightful.
Pretty bad.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you if you're elected public advocate how you would change the weather, but we're following a simple format here, so we'd like to know why you think you'd be the best public advocate.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we should introduce you, Manny
Yeah.
Alejandro. Alessandro. Alejandro.
Yes, if I'm a public advocate and fortunate enough to become public advocate, the weather is important. I'll make sure that we investigate Department of Sanitation to make sure that we don't have that issue that we did a couple of months ago when we had a couple inches of snow and it wasn't cleaned up. So the weather and the snow is a permanent issue. So I am Manny Alejandro. I'm running under the Better Leaders Party, and one of the main reasons why I'm running is I'm just really fed up with the state of the city, and I think we could do a lot better. I think there's a lack of transparency of what's going on. We talked about Amazon. I think a lot of issues with regard to Amazon, and people feel like they don't really know what's going on. They don't know the details, how many jobs will be given to New Yorkers, union, non-union, what will happen with housing. So what I'm keen on is focusing on bringing a level of transparency and being a check predominantly on the mayor. I think that there's really no one who's running who has that ability, and I do. I have the background, the experience. I'm an attorney, and I was a former chief compliance officer for a major exchange for many years. So I understand integrity, transparency that I feel are very much lacking in this city right now.
Good. I won't ask you another question about Amazon because our time's brief, but in terms of public education, making better leaders, we've seen this mayor and this city council extend education to pre-K. What other ideas would you advocate for to make public education in New York City better for creating people who can fill these jobs that are coming up in the future?
Sure, I'm for pre-K education. I think it's very important that children start learning as soon as they can and be afforded that opportunity. What I'm also keen on, and a lot of work I've done in my personal career, is with regard to STEM. We need to focus more on science and technology. I think we need to push our younger generation that are very computer proficient to move to learn towards coding and computer development. So to the extent we can implement more with regard to science and technology in the curriculum, that's great. I'm also a big proponent of trade schools. So I think we need to focus on individuals who might not want to be an attorney or a doctor, which is clearly a great profession. Nonetheless, I think it's important to kind of take another look at trade schools in terms of giving people an opportunity to get a job at a very young age, maybe not go to college directly after high school or go to college at night, and be able to afford to do that and make a good living at the same time.
Okay, that's good. Trade schools, as you know, we're housed in the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen, which is doing a good job on that. So if you're elected public advocate, in addition to public education, how would you help to maybe advocate for funding to help more nonprofits carry out good education at an affordable rate? How would you advocate to help the small business person who can create jobs on the other side of what Amazon's doing?
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of issues that are occurring that are not very apparent to people. And to me, the role of a public advocate is the chief ombudsperson of the city and the chief whistleblower. So the public advocate is the one who would actually shed light on these issues and work closely with these groups. To the extent we can get more press involved or get people to really know what's going on and elevate these issues, amplify people's voices effectively, that's how I see the role.
Thank you. Manny, so in 30 seconds to a minute, why would you make the best public advocate?
Thank you. So from my perspective, I would be the true independent voice of New Yorkers to stand up to the mayor, to the city council, to the city agencies. I'm also an attorney and would effectively utilize Article 78 proceedings forward against city agencies. I feel that it's very important that New Yorkers have a voice and someone in that office who's truly independent. I hear a lot about coalition building. I'm not sure the role of public advocate calls for coalition building. The public advocate should be independent of any conflicts. And as a true outsider, I'm not in government, I've never been in government, I can really take the fight for the people. And I feel I'm best positioned to do that.
Thank you for that strong closing, and we appreciate you coming out in this weather and the courage to run for a very important position.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
And next, we have the good fortune to have the former Speaker of the City Council, Melissa Viverito. Yeah, it's the one part that's wonderful about New York City, and people don't realize that we're all neighbors. It's a place of villages and communities. So we want to start just by you giving us a sense of our topic here is really thinking of the future, future New York City, and when you leave, what the ultimate legacy would be that people would say, wow, she was beyond anything we could imagine as public advocate and what difference she made. So if you would start by a minute in terms of why you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. Buenas noches. And, you know, it has been mentioned, right? The idea of the public advocate is not only to be an independent watchdog, but it is also to ensure that government is being responsive to the needs of New Yorkers. Right? We have a lot of city agencies that are providing services. We have laws in place in the city of New York which agencies are supposed to be abiding by, right? So in the case of the business community or any community that may have particular concerns, how is government addressing and whether or not they're being effective? You know, my trajectory is one of really trying to ensure that we have more equity and justice in government, that this is a city that is an inclusive city, a city that belongs to all of us, and making sure that we implement policies, legislation, initiatives that really speak to that, and that really are addressing the ways and trying to right historic injustices. In the case of the business sector, right, how do we really address the needs that the business community has? We've tried to do that through legislation when I was in the city council. We've done initiatives to help small businesses. There's a lot of ways that you can do that, but you know, as an independent watchdog with oversight over city agencies and oversight over the mayor, it really is about making government more effective. Public advocate can introduce legislation, right? The public advocate can possibly engage in litigation. And those are things to really look at, and that's what I would do as public advocate.
So that is a big part of the role, and as we know, it's still being examined what the role is and what you bring to it. In our communities, whether it be the small business, the mom and pop shop, the Amazon situation that we're facing today, not just in terms of Amazon, but the big companies coming in, the banks and so forth, and disrupting community as such. What can we do that we don't lose the flavor of New York? That really is a social justice.
Well, I mean, I support and I really believe in the concept that we need to build a coalition around it. We've been talking about the possibility of commercial rent control as a way of supporting the ability for small businesses to survive. That's important to really look at. How can we build a coalition to take a look at that issue, right? And that's really important. That really is something that is threatening a lot of the small mom and pops. In the case of Amazon, you know, it did not go through any sort of public review. There was no possibility of engagement to look at where the concerns that were being brought up by the communities were being addressed. This was a backroom deal in the middle of the night and very limited input. And I think that that's a concern for me about how government functions. I want more transparency and accountability. When big decisions are being made, there has to be aggressive and a process in place that ensures community engagement in a vigorous way. And sometimes government thinks that that's tedious, but I think that that's the most effective type of government, is to engage in vigorous debate and conversation about challenges that this project may present, and how do we try to arrive at some sort of consensus or figure out a way whether maybe that's not the right fit. And so in this case, I've said that I don't support the deal as is, and I believe that it does threaten small businesses and the concerns that it raises on that end, but first and foremost, the lack of any sort of vigorous or thorough community review process is really problematic for me, and not only on this deal, but on many other issues that this administration has been involved in, and where communities feel that their voice is completely stifled and not being heard.
So we're going to segue into one which goes to really the title of your party line, which is Fix the MTA.
Yes.
Transportation is a significant issue in this town. And the MTA, for all of us who ride it every day, is the best way, but the most frustrating way, more and more. What can the public advocate bring to bear with the state involvement, the city involvement?
Well, I mean, look, one of the aspects, that we do talk about is the bully pulpit. If you have someone with a vision, very forceful and aggressive, and someone who is a coalition builder, you can really, I believe, get stuff done. Right now, we have what I say is the pissing match between the governor and the mayor. Right? Nobody seems to be taking responsibility on either NYCHA or either the MTA. And, it's all about the blame game and who's, so the idea of just having someone that is going to amplify the voice of just, of frustration, right? That government isn't listening, that government isn't really doing it. And what are the solutions? What's being offered? What are the revenue sources? Where are we we do at the bottom, both with NYCHA and with MTA, we have seen a historic level of disinvestment in critically important infrastructure. And that is why we now have a crisis. Defer, defer, defer. The crisis is before us. What are we going to do? And the transportation affects the quality of life of every single New Yorker and for businesses. Businesses are thinking whether or not they're going to set up shop in New York. You have workers that are possibly getting late to work, being docked for pay, or possibly may lose their job. You have students that maybe are getting to school late or have to wake up an hour earlier because you don't know if you're going to get until late. The level of stress and anxiety and frustration that people are feeling is real. And I ride the subways every day as well, and so I hear it and I feel it too, because you are rushing and trying to get, I'm going to my next meeting in Queens, and I want to make sure that I get there on time. So this is a very real issue that impacts New York City and its vibrancy. And so that to me is critically important, and really shining a light and utilizing the voice that I can exert. I am aggressive. For those of you who have gotten to know me, I'm not afraid to speak up. And I believe that it really is important that this position of public advocate is very much involved in raising the voice of New Yorkers about getting the MTA fixed.
5 minute goes in a second.
Yes.
And we're going to give you a minute to close in terms of any issues or anything about yourself that you want to say. You touched on NYCHA, you might want to mention something because that's a disaster here.
It is a disaster. Look, as I mentioned, being raised in Puerto Rico in an activist environment, my mother, who was a leader in the feminist movement, raised in an environment of wanting to enact change, of equity and justice. And so I've seen my whole life's work around that perspective and that lens, that in this city, which is supposed to be so progressive, we've seen a dwindling in the number of women that are representing us. We don't have women in citywide office. We have basically a criminal justice system that continues to perpetuate inequality. We have school segregation. There's so many issues where there's so much injustice and inequity that we have to do something about it. And my life's work has been about moving the dial. I've done that as a council member. I've done that as speaker. I am a coalition builder, and now I want to use my voice to create and continue to create more equity and justice in the city of New York, and I hope that I can count on your support on February 26th.
We thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
A great life of service to our city.
I'd like to call back Tom Costa and Rafael Espinal Jr.
Rafael, I don't know if you were here, the announcement format, you have a 1 minute opening, I get to ask you some questions, and we have 30 seconds, a minute at the end, it's like a 5-minute deal. Feel free to take a couple extra minutes, because I timed the last two, and they went slightly slightly over five minutes. We'll give you equal opportunity. If you'd like to tell us about yourself in a minute.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Councilman Rafael Espinal. I've been in the City Council for 5 years now. I represent Bushwick and East New York, Brooklyn. I'm also the chair of the City Council's Consumer Affairs Committee. So a lot of the work I've done has been around protecting consumers, but also supporting industries here in our city. Most notably, I am the person that fought against de Blasio to save the horse carriage industry. I'm also the person that repealed the no dancing cabaret law to allow dancing within our nightlife establishments and create the Office of Nightlife to support our restaurants, bars, and the overall music industries. So I do believe that the city is heading in the wrong direction. It's getting harder and harder to live here, to do business here, and just to be a New Yorker overall. And I feel that the city has not made the right investments in the past, has not passed the right legislation to make sure that we wouldn't be in the situation we are today. So I'm running on the livable city line, because as a New Yorker, just like everyone in this room, feels that the city needs to do more to make sure that the city is accessible to everyone. I see the public advocate opportunity to be able to uplift the work I've been doing and making sure that all neighborhoods and all boroughs feel represented finally by the city of New York, and we're actually getting things done across the board.
How do you do that?
Well, many different ways. I mean, as mentioned earlier,
as public advocate,
a public advocate actually has the power to introduce legislation. So that does not change, right? I will continue doing that work. The public advocate also speaks for all 5 boroughs. I've been successful at passing laws that have affected my district exclusively. For example, in East New York, whenever a new development is built using taxpayers' dollars, the storefronts have to be affordable to below market rate to the local community to create affordable commercial fronts. This is something that I hope to bring citywide and be able to talk about it and make sure that we pass real meaningful legislation so that all boroughs can have that benefit.
So you would lead with the legislative characteristics of that office?
I believe so.
Is that,
yeah, I've spent the first half of my time in the city council.
That's somewhat different from what some of the other candidates.
Yes, I would say I spent the first half of my time in the city council really being a pothole council member, taking care of the day-to-day issues of my district, making sure that the constituent services were top-notch and really dealing with all the lack of city services in the neighborhood. The past 2 years, I've really been using my legislative powers to really inflict change across all 5 boroughs. So I think being a public advocate will allow me to continue that work, but also allow me to work in different communities and really get a real sense of what's happening across the city.
I want to switch over to one of the questions that was asked to 2 or 3 of the candidates about Amazon. And I'm more interested in how you see the public advocate's role in generally speaking, as opposed to what side you are in the...
Well, I'm going to open up and say that there are candidates in this race who signed a letter urging for Amazon to come into the city of New York. I did not sign that letter. I thought it was irresponsible to invite a company that has a questionable history, that we should have had a conversation first. And all those candidates who signed that letter have now 100% have made a complete 180 and are opposed to the deal. I think that tech leadership is very concerning to me. We need to make sure we have people who make the right decisions and making sure that they understand the impact the decisions have.
Well, what would be the right decision?
The right decision will be to have a real conversation of transparency, talk about whether these jobs are actually going to be union jobs, whether the jobs are actually going to be available to the local community. Does it make sense to give $3 billion to the richest corporation in the world, or should we invest that $3 billion into our cities, small businesses, and infrastructure? Those are the conversations that needs to happen. But unfortunately, this all happened behind closed doors, and these decisions that were made, we can't take back. So as public advocate, the first thing I'm going to do is bring a lawsuit to be able to reset these conversations and make sure that people's voices are being heard in this deal.
Okay, I presume he got an extra minute or 2? Okay, we've got to bring you to a close. You have 1 minute to close.
Yeah. Well, I would say that, you know, if you are concerned with the direction our city's headed, if you're tired of elected officials using the same old playbook to deal with the same old problems, and you want fresh leadership, want to see the city become a livable city for all New Yorkers, I urge you to vote for me, Rafael Espinal, on the livable city line. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, thank you for coming to this forum, and let me ask you a simple question. Your time's at a premium right now, so what made it important for you to come to this forum?
I wouldn't miss this for the world. The public advocate has to be a voice for all New Yorkers and for all 5 boroughs. And even though I'm going to Brooklyn and Queens after this event, I would be remiss if I didn't stop here in Manhattan to tell everybody about my campaign for public advocate and why I think that I would do the best job and be a check on Mayor de Blasio and a lot of his policies and absenteeism that I think is not being addressed right now.
So that's a good question. Thank you for the summary of who you are, but why would you make the best public advocate? Your party line is common sense, so tell us what you would bring to the position.
I think we could all agree that common sense is something that's lacking these days, especially in the city of New York. The job of the public advocate, first and foremost, is to be a check on the mayor. Is supposed to be someone who's willing to hold the mayor accountable, to stand up to the mayor, and to be a counterbalance to the mayor in a lot of his policies. We saw when we had Mark Green as the public advocate, he was a thorn in the side to Mayor Giuliani on civil rights, on police issues, on homelessness. Bill de Blasio was a much better public advocate, arguably, than he has been a mayor. He was a thorn in the side of former Mayor Bloomberg, talking about income inequality and the tale of two cities. But now that Mayor de Blasio has been the mayor, there really isn't a citywide elected official that's able to serve as a check on the administration and push back on some of the more radical policies that I think most New Yorkers are not in favor of. The mayor right now is spending more time out of town than he is in town. He's in Vermont, he's in New Hampshire, he's in Iowa. He thinks he's going to be the next president. Meanwhile, the subways and buses are a mess. NYCHA is crumbling. Homelessness is at an all-time high. The budget has ballooned to $92.5 billion. On every single measurable outcome and issue that the mayor has direct control over, he's completely MIA. And so I think we need a public advocate to actually say, hey, mayor, get back to the city and fix these problems because real New Yorkers and real communities are suffering and they need you to be here and do the job that you were elected to do.
So we know the public advocate can actually introduce legislation. We all know that affordable housing and NYCHA is a big issue, but in your role as public advocate, do you see any room for commercial advocacy for commercial affordability of rents?
I think the public advocate is uniquely situated to advocate for commercial tenants and for small businesses who feel like they are being neglected or ignored by the administration, because we know that they are. And in particular, I know that we brought up Amazon before, and I'm not sure if that's going to come up. I'm the only candidate in this race that actually supports Amazon. I support 25,000 good-paying jobs coming to the city of New York. I don't believe in looking a gift horse in the mouth. They've signed a project labor agreement. They're going to build union. They're paying prevailing wage, not minimum wage, to actually build the facility. And the public pressure is so intense right now that you know that a majority of those jobs are going to be Queens residents or New Yorkers, and these are good-paying jobs, and I support them. That's why I'm running on the common sense line. There's a big difference between me and my opponents and the other people who are running for this office. I think that I am the one that is going to stand up to the mayor the most, but also, I also think that my views and my opinion are more mainstream and centrist than some of the other folks in this race. I'm running on the common sense line because I think that the city right now is lacking common sense. I think most people know I'm a Republican, but I consider myself a Rockefeller Republican. It's a dying breed. I'm socially liberal. I'm fiscally conservative. I believe in school choice. I'm pro-business. Obviously I'm pro-choice, and I believe in marriage equality. But the point is that I think that my views in terms of business and quality of life align very much with the mainstream New York values.
So time's at a premium, so why don't you just take 30 seconds to a minute to summarize again why you would make the best public advocate.
I believe that if you're tired of Mayor de Blasio and you think the city's headed in the wrong direction, then you need to vote for me, because I absolutely would be his worst nightmare. If you ask Bill de Blasio, there are 17 candidates running for public advocate. Who is the last person that you would want to be the next public advocate? There's no question in my mind. He would say it's me. If you love Bill de Blasio, you think everything in the city is going in a great direction, then you have 15 other candidates to choose from. And it's as simple as that. This is a referendum on Bill de Blasio. It is a nonpartisan special election. All New Yorkers, all parties can vote, and I'm asking for yours on Election Day. Thank you very much.
And that is February 26th. Adonis Rodriguez, come on up, Councilman, and Howard.
This is like a tag team race in the Olympics. How are you? Good to see you. So we want you to really open by the fact of, and you've been somebody who's been outstanding in so many ways, telling us if you were to become, when you become public advocate, what would be that outstanding thing that you would look back and say, I really accomplished what I want to in this role as public advocate? What do you bring to the job?
First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my vision. One of the things that I like to do as a public advocate is to leave my fingerprints, to be part of the movement, to build our city as a place where working class live with dignity, with a path to take to middle class, the children of the working class. I came here to wash dishes at Henry Restaurant, West 46th Avenue. So now when I pass by this Capital Bank, and I walk with my 6 and 4 years old daughter, I remind my daughter, that's when your father came here to work. So that they would never forget. I'm a pro-technology person. I've been a co-founder of 2 schools. I was a teacher for 13 years, and then a council member for 10 years, and 40 years when I was staff of community activism. I did inward rezoning, a responsible rezoning, that had 3 areas as a main focus. 1, to bring economic development around technology, health, and to make us a Latino food destination for the city of New York. At the same time, I tried to put a solution to a community where for the last 50 years, less than 1,000 apartments were built. So what I can say is that as a future public advocate, if I get the support of my fellow New Yorkers, I will be the voice of the voiceless with a plan to build our city as a strong middle class, at the same time that we respect the right of the workers.
So we're going to take advantage of your education background and ask you a question on that. We have a city where the education of children makes all the difference in the rest of their lives. And we have certain inequities that are built into it. What could you do as the public advocate to change 40 years of education in New York, if it needs change, that would uplift and give an opportunity to all the kids to become the best of who they could become?
I will be sure that we as a city of New York demand a more transparency on how we invest $22 billion to educate 1.1 million students. And why still today we are not able to guarantee that those students who are studying UPK in kindergarten, when they go to middle school, most of them they're in the 3rd grade level. Why, as a former high school teacher, we are welcoming students, especially in the Southern community, not the newcomer like myself, that came here at the age of 18, I still speak with my accents, but those kids with grandfather and their father that was born here, and they get into high school 9th grade, and they are in 4th grade level. So I believe that it is time for us to look on what is the plan, where are we failing, why we have to bring leaders from other places for the nation, why we don't work with Teachers College, Students College, the academic community, and put together a comprehensive plan where we can say, let's make all of us accountable to take our children to read, write, do science and math at the level, and let's learn from the Asian community.
Can the Public Advocate's Office make that plan, bring people together and work on that? Is that a role that you could take?
The role of the Public Advocate is started with making city agencies accountable to provide all the services and respect to all New Yorkers. As a father of the 6 and 12, I'm a taxi driver when I come to my family. I just go around going from Riverdale to the Upper West Side, to the Jersey Pier, to the Astor Green. Because there in North Manhattan, children, 165,000 residents that I represent, they don't have an indoor pool in the whole area. So they think that we take it for granted, that for some places they can see as a luxury. But I know as someone that had to wake up on Wednesday at 4:30 to take my daughter to the swimming practice at Ashland Green, I know that swimming is not a luxury. It's part of education. It's part of the development of our children. So there's a lot of things that we're missing today. Yes, right now, Chesapeake is full of children in many other places. That's not happening in the underserved community. So unless we connect children in the underserved community with basic services that I know that I fight and I work hard to provide my children and other children in New York City, we will continue having a system which is broken. When it comes to the specialized high school, I propose to double the number of specialized high school. I propose that we should for the Asian community. We cannot say that we offer AP classes in high school, the underserved community, capacity to 25, and only 5 students are sitting there. We cannot say that we will be successful at providing support to the students to take the specialized test in 8th grade. How is that working in the Asian community? They started preparing the kids since 3rd grade. Why does it matter if my daughter goes to progressive school? I know that enrolling my children in Kumar is important because it brings repetition, it brings discipline. So the same thing that I fight for my kid is the same thing that I will fight for from the public advocate's role, being sure that city agencies, starting with the DOE, provide all the services and respect to everyone, especially to our children that could be, they can be our next middle class. Because if I did it, this guy, the SOT to watch this, every single children in New York, they should be our middle class.
So we got about 30 seconds for you to close, although that was a pretty good closing, to tell you the truth. And I would say maybe you could touch on, because it's a segue into it, the uniting immigrants, because what you've been talking about is uniting people. And in your role as public advocate, that's something important to you, I take it?
For all, it should be important for the whole city of New York. Why is that included in the curriculum? That the first non-Native American who settled in New York City was a free black man that was brought by the Dutch in 1613, who settled in New York City from the same island, Juan Rodriguez. Why are we teaching the immigration history in New York City? We don't say that 5,000 Dominicans came through Ellis Island in 1887. Because if we teach who we are, as Governor Andrew Cuomo said, his grandfather came from Ellis Island. The grandfather of the president came from Ellis Island. So there's a lot of things that we can accomplish if we share our values. Because celebrating our culture is more than Cinco de Mayo, drinking a tequila. It's more than quebradita. It's more than bachata and merengue. It's celebrating the ethic of hardworking immigrants that we all are.
And that's why people should vote for you, is that right? Okay, great. Thank you for being here.
I see, oh, Councilman.
Thanks, everyone.
I guess the weather's out there, but I see Benjamin Yee's here. Come on up.
Thank you.
So this is a pretty powerful race. So tell us what made you jump into this race?
Great question. The number one thing that made me
first tell the room who you are and just give a brief elevator speech.
Sure. So my name is Benjamin Yee, and I'm running for public advocate. I am currently the secretary of the Manhattan Democratic Party and Democratic State Committeeman for New York's 66th Assembly District. And if that's all you knew about me, you'd probably think this guy's some kind of hack. But it's not the case. The way I became secretary of the Manhattan Democratic Party is the exact same reason I'm running for public advocate, which is to say, somebody in 2009 told me about the power that the local county committees have over the selection of our elected officials. And they also told me that many of these seats are completely vacant. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the county committee, I won't go into the structure because we don't have the time for that. But just know that this is an important institution. And when I found out about this, we cooked up a plan to run about 100 new people to build a new voice for a new community, and we were successful. Now, the local county organization wasn't particularly happy with us, and they tried to ice us out for about 2 years. But 2 years later, when the elections came around again, we ran more people. That made them think. 2 years after that, we ran even more people. And they decided that they'd be all right with me running for third vice chair, and I won that election. And 2 years after that, we ran even more people. And I became secretary of the party and the Democratic State Committeeman. I know what happens when you give...
You understand politics. So the first question again is, why did you jump into this race?
Great. So the importance of politics is one of resource allocation. I think we all understand that the government plays a critical role in deciding who gets what in our society. And so making sure that people have a voice is the most important part. For the last 10 years, I have been organizing throughout New York City, and in the last 2 years in particular, I've been teaching a civics course that I put together myself all around New York, from Parkchester to Staten Island, East Village to Rockaway, Southeast Queens, Jamaica, you name it, I've been there. And I have taught people about how our political system works, how our government works, and how our bureaucracy works. And I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. I've trained over 4,000 people personally. Hundreds of them run for county committee, get involved with the community board, join a community education council. This is why I'm running for public advocate, because I know that when you give people civic knowledge, they can build a voice for their own community. And when they're able to do that in their community, they can change the city. And so I am running on 3 concrete proposals that can be done from the public advocate's office. They don't require the mayor, they don't require the city council, they don't require legislation to be passed. Civics for all, power for communities, and justice for New Yorkers. Now these are not platitudes, these are programs. I urge you to look them up on my website, benjaminye.com, to see how they can truly change how our city makes decisions.
Well, let's talk about civics. In the world of the tweet, we're getting a lot of hateful tweets, divisiveness. If you were in this public advocate's role, how would you use your power to end and stop hateful, divisive rhetoric and politics and speech?
This is a fantastic question. So this actually touches me very personally, because I am half Chinese and half Polish Jewish. And there have very recently been fatal attacks on the Chinese community, hate crimes, and violent attacks on members of the Jewish community in Crown Heights. So this is something that actually touches me very personally and has a very, very meaningful and recent impact. So, how to deal with this? There are a couple of things that need to be done. First and foremost, we need to make sure the city is tough on hate. I'm not an intolerant person, obviously, but I am intolerant of one thing, and that is intolerance. And so the Mayor's Commission on Human Rights has been letting us all down, and we have not been nearly as strong on hate as the city should be. If we want to say that hate is not okay, we need to continuously send a strong message that our society will not accept it, and that there's no loopholes to get out of prosecution for hate crimes. Second, we need a government that, instead of dividing communities over bad policy, works to bring communities together to develop good policy. This is where the Power for Communities model comes in. That is a framework for bringing together community stakeholders to do bottom-up, sustained, and proactive city planning. Now, why do we want this? Because right now, our city government comes into communities and tells the communities what they're going to get, and everybody gets upset. But while one community gets upset with what's coming their way, all the other communities turn their backs. I was recently in Sunset Park, and let me tell you, I was talking with one of the Latino organizers about what's happening with Industry City out there. And they said their #1 goal, what they'd like to do, is reach out to the Asian community, which is a growing force in Sunset Park, because by uniting, they can have a better voice in the future of their community. But here's the problem. Right now, the mayor is pushing an education policy which makes no sense, which divides the Chinese and Latino communities. Now, we can't have this. We need a public advocate that does more than just talk about how we need to stop hate, and more than just talk about what's wrong with what the mayor is doing, but puts in the resources, the staff, the money, all of these things to bring communities together to have those conversations, and more than anything, working together is what gets rid of hate.
We appreciate that. So I know that we want to do a lot of networking. That's what we do at the Chamber to help build small businesses.
Right.
So I'm not going to ask you that question, but we may have you back after the election in any capacity. but take about 30 seconds to summarize again what you would like to see your legacy to be if you were elected public advocate.
So, this is a pretty simple question for me, and it's a very simple and straightforward question, which deserves a simple and straightforward answer. Anybody who wants to be engaged and have access to the levers of power should know how to access it and have had the opportunity to build a voice for their community. That is why the programs exist. That is what I'm promising, and there are metrics by which we can judge these. Civics for All is a program by which the Public Advocate's Office will make knowledge about our political system accessible. And we can judge this based on how many people interact with the Public Advocate's Office, attend a workshop. Based on the workshops that have already trained over 4,000 people that I've been doing for free, imagine we put some budget behind that. There are things that we can count. There will be things that you can say, that was successful, he did a good job, he didn't do a good job, we can fix this, or heaven forbid, he's unfit for re-election. I don't think you'll see that because these are programs that are not just theoretical, they are proven models for improving democracy.
Benjamin Yee, Manhattan District Leader, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Should we do one of those?
Yeah, is Saul here? Well, we can, I think we're just missing to the weather two of our candidates, but in the meantime, let's go network. Let's go introduce ourselves in the outer room and enjoy. Kalari Targona has catered this, and this is the Coffee House 105 Years Young.